Chapter 554 Eclipse of the Moon. The cold wind was like a knife, and the setting sun was like blood. The blurry evening sun rested at the end of the sea and sky. The surface of the sea was horribly calm and cold, leaving only the vast, dead silence between heaven and earth. On the vast, ice-covered ocean, a huge icebreaker slowly approached. It has been drifting on the sea for several days. If it weren't for this huge icebreaker, it would be impossible to navigate the deep sea in such a cold and icy world. However, there are no crew members on board this huge icebreaker. Because the huge hull can withstand the erosion of the icy ocean, it cannot stop the wind on the surface of the sea, which is sharper than a knife. The entire shy race has been unmanned. Today, in 2050, artificial intelligence has replaced most mechanical work. Even in this treacherous environment, faint sounds of low music can be heard coming from the ship. On the deck of the shy race icebreaker, a man wearing a gray newsboy hat and a vest of the same color is leaning lazily against the railing. He is slender and thin, and looks to be in his 30s or 40s. He is able to stay outside without a cold weather suit in such a cold environment, so he must be an extraordinary person, and either in very good physical shape or have some ability to protect himself from the cold. The low music is coming from the shakuhachi in his hands. When the song ends, he looks out at the silent sea and up into the distance. A meaningful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. When he smiled, it gave off a very evil feeling, as if he were a fox with devious schemes. He put away the shakuhachi and turned towards the cabin. Inside the cabin below, there were more people at this time. The warm air from the air conditioner made the environment below comfortable and pleasant. When the newsboy hat entered, there was a man dressed as a samurai half lying lazily against the wall by the door. He had long hair tied in a bun, was wearing a dark blue kimono, and was barefoot. Although he looked like he was sleeping, he was holding a samurai sword wrapped in red thread in his arms. Through his wide kimono, you could faintly see that he was hiding a short sword in his arms. Not far away, by the bar, two men were gambling, the simplest way to do so being to flip a coin. A man with a crew cut and gold-rimmed glasses is the dealer. The man with the long scar on his face is the one who has to guess heads or tails. It seems like a fair game, but the scarred man keeps losing, and soon his table is full of empty sake bottles. The newsboy hat passes over the samurai and the two gamblers and comes to the center of the cabin. Here, there is a small table. A woman dressed in a Heian period Miko costume is sitting at the table. A quaint scroll lay open in front of her, and she held a brush with a goblin figurine at the end in her hand, dipping it into the ink in the box next to her. But the ink was not black, but red, bright red like blood. The newsboy hat knelt half-bent in front of her and asked with a smile, tilting his head, "How's my fortune today?" The shrine maiden bowed respectfully to the newsboy hat and said, "Excellent." The newsboy hat nodded with satisfaction and let out a long sigh of relief. "That's great. If things continue like this, we'll be able to land in that city called Linhai soon." He turned his head and looked at the sofa not far away, where a man almost 2 meters tall, as strong as a brown bear, was sitting. However, the man was wearing a black suit and was flipping through a sailing magazine with his large palm, which was somewhat incongruous. "Daikikai, how far are we from our destination?" The man named Daikikai Yenjin did not even look up. 3 days. The newsboy hat looked up with a smile, looked at the ceiling and sighed. 3 days, is that right? 3 days from now, we will land in the place called Shenzhou. Then, we will write a legend of our own. The investigation team's mission in Tianhai City was over. Bai Li Changqing led the team back to Jinling, to the super-military fortress built at great expense on the eastern side of Jinling Blizzard City. With heavy snow falling, this gray superstructure lies prostrate on the ground like a ferocious beast. The tall city walls are more than 50 meters high, and every 3 meters there is a heavily armed soldier in black combat uniform on guard. Every 10 meters there is a tower with a high-speed machine gun inside, which can instantly shred any carbon-based life form with a rate of fire of 6,000 rounds per minute. This super fortress, which covers thousands of square kilometers, has been under construction for decades. According to Xinjiang's military plan, Blizzard City and the other 5 militarized fortresses are known as the last 6 lines of defense for Huagua. They have Huagua's most powerful army and weapons. No matter what happens, as long as they are still standing, Huagua will stand forever. By Li Changqing their car arrived at the base of the tall city walls and, after inspection, drove through the heavy metal gates. Inside Blizzard City, it was quiet and even a little depressing. There was no famine or unrest due to food shortages. But there was total military management. So on the streets and alleys, there was almost no activity from ordinary people. There are only soldiers and special personnel working for Blizzard City. After Bailey Changqing and the others returned, they were immediately approached by staff members and taken for inspection. These squad members who fought in the field needed to ensure that they were in normal physical condition after returning and that they did not bring in unknown germs from the outside. After undergoing a complicated inspection, a young officer appeared before Bailey Changqing. He was dressed in a sharp green military uniform, with a neatly combed back and expensive gold-rimmed glasses. Upon seeing Bai Li Changqing, he said, "Bai Li Zhongliang, please come with me." Bai Li Changqing nodded and followed the young soldier. This soldier was no ordinary person. He was Lan Xincheng, secretary to the supreme commander of the Jiangnan region, Zhu Zheng. A civilian by background, he comes from an extraordinary family background and is very trusted by Zhu Zheng. As a rule, after they have completed their assigned tasks, they need to report the situation to Zhu Zheng in person. What's more, this time, the problem in Tianhai City is relatively serious. After all, the death of a captain-level figure is enough to alarm the entire Blizzard City's senior management. Bai Li Changqing followed Lan Xincheng to the command center, Zhu Zheng's office. "Commander, Bai Li Changqing is here," Lan Xincheng reported to Zhu Zheng outside the office via a communication device. After receiving a positive reply from Zhu Zheng, Lan Xincheng stepped aside, and the dark silver metal door in front of him slowly opened. Bai Li Changqing was slightly nervous inside, and he walked in step by step with a stern face. After all, this time he had to lie to Zhu Zheng. Although he had discussed it with his teammates before coming, and everyone agreed with his approach, however, Zhu Zheng's majesty is too deeply rooted in the hearts of everyone in Blizzard City. Even a veteran who has been fighting for a long time will be afraid of him. Chapter 555 Blizzard City. Bai Li Changqing walked into Zhu Zheng's office. Zhu Zheng was in his 50s, with gray hair and a thin figure. However, his face always carried an iron-like, determined expression, and his gaze was sharp like an eagle's. After entering the room, Bai Li Changqing subconsciously glanced at the security guard standing behind Zhu Zheng. He was slightly younger than Zhu Zheng, in his 40s, with an unremarkable appearance, wearing an old-fashioned pair of round glass lenses and a pigtail tied at the back of his head. However, Bai Li Changqing knew that this gentleman's strength was probably among the top 3 in the entire Blizzard City. When Bian Zhengwu was still alive, he once told Bai Li Changqing that within 100 paces, it would be easier to kill him than to kill a chicken. "Commander." Bai Li Changqing came to the office and stood solemnly in front of the mahogany desk and saluted. Zhu Zheng nodded at him with his hands behind his back. "You have done a very good job on this mission. I originally thought that you would temporarily retreat and then the headquarters would carry out a devastating strike on Tianhai City. That's good, too. The city of Tianhai has been preserved." Zhu Zheng's tone of voice did not show that he cared much about Tianhai City. He already knew that almost everyone in Tianhai City had died in the corpse tide, and the remaining people were few and far between. So this city could be completely abandoned. Bai Li Changqing said, "This operation was thanks to the border troops. If he had not sacrificed himself to contain the cult leader of the Bai Shui sect, we would have probably all been accounted for there." They reported back to headquarters before they returned. As for the statements in the report, they were almost no different from what Zhang Yi had said, except that they were slightly embellished. But the main credit was still given to their investigation team, and in particular, Bian Zhengwu's credit was highlighted. When Bian Zhengwu was mentioned, Zhu Zheng couldn't help but feel a touch of sadness. Bian Zhengwu was once a good soldier. After the end of the world, he also made very important contributions to the Jiangnan region. His death was an irreparable loss for the Jiangnan region. Although he knew that it would happen sooner or later, Zhu Jing still couldn't help but feel sorry for him at this moment. He looked at Bai Li Changqing and waved at him. "Sit down and chat." After the two of them sat down, Zhu Jing continued to ask, "While you were in Tianhai City this time, did you encounter any good prospects that you could bring back to headquarters to cultivate?" Bai Li Changqing had already reported to Zhu Jing via email about the various circumstances of the Tianhai City mission. So at this time, Zhu Jing did not talk about the mission again, but instead talked about talent. After all, while the Jiangnan region headquarters is certainly full of talent, there are often sacrifices, resulting in expenses that exceed income. Therefore, it is particularly important to attract fresh blood from surrounding cities. Bai Li Changqing sat upright in his chair, and the first thing that came to mind was the shadow of Zhang Yi. Today, Zhang Yi's strength is definitely not inferior to Bian Zhenwu's at the beginning. And aside from strength, in terms of strategy and temperament, he is definitely someone who deserves attention. But according to the agreement he made with Zhang Yi, he cannot reveal Zhang Yi's strength. Bai Li Changqing thought for a moment, and then said to Zhu Jing, "Tianhai City does have a few people with considerable strength. After our investigation, there are 7 people I think have the strength to join the investigation team. They are Xing Tian from the Qingpu base, Xiao Honglian and Zhuge Qingting from the Yanqing base, Chen Jingwan from the Chaoyu base, and Zhang Yi, Liang Yu, and Yang Mi from Zhang Yi's team. Among these people, basically all of them are powerful combat roles. However, Yang Mi's ability to assist is very strong, and she is very suitable for being in the team." Zhu Jing nodded slowly after listening. "You've already said all of this in your report." He crossed his arms on the table and suddenly said, "I'm quite interested in this young man called Zhang Yi. Can you tell me more about him?" Bai Li Changqing felt a little nervous inside, and thought to himself, so it's come to this. There were some things he could hide, but there was some information that he really couldn't hide. For example, everything Zhang Yi did during the Undead Tide crisis was just too impressive. He was the only team leader in the early stages of the Corpse Tide who was not affected by it. When Bai Shui taught them to fight together, he relied on his formidable sniper skills to kill almost all the bronze-armored corpses by himself. Later, in the final battle, it was also he who used the powerful defensive capabilities of the spatial system to delay Gen Sori. It can be said that without Zhang Yi, the mission in Tianhai City would have definitely failed, and they would not have been able to save their own lives. With so many eye-catching feats, even if Zhang Yi and Bai Li Changqing tried to hide them as much as possible, they could not hide them all. Therefore, Bai Li Changqing only hid the final battle, and Zhang Yi alone exhausted Yuan Kongye. As for his previous merits, there was no way to hide them. And this was enough to make Zhu Jing interested in Zhang Yi. Bai Li Changqing looked at Zhu Jing seriously. Zhang Yi is indeed a talent. He is very capable and possesses an extremely rare spatial ability. If he can come to our Jiangnan district headquarters, with his abilities he will be an elite even in the investigation team. Bai Li Changqing first praised Zhang Yi. However, soon, he changed the subject. However, this person's mind and personality are not very reassuring. Zhu Jing's gaze tightened. "Oh? What does that mean? Is he a bad person?" The first criterion for recruitment to the Jiangnan region's investigation team is not ability, but absolute loyalty to the region. This is not a corrupt ideology. But in troubled times, if the people within have the wrong mindset, it could cause huge trouble. Bai Li Changqing knew this very well, which is why he said so. He continued, "Zhang Yi is a selfish person. He is like the people from other cities. Perhaps it is because he has experienced too much bloodshed and cruelty in the end times that he has no sense of community. Even in our battles against the zombies, he always puts his personal interests first and is always prepared to abandon his teammates and escape. In addition, this person will stop at nothing to achieve his goals, giving the impression that he has no faith." After Bai Li Changqing said this, he suddenly felt that he had gone too far. Although he was deliberately smearing Zhang Yi to prevent Zhu Jing from falling for him, backstabbing someone like this could easily affect his own impression in the leader's mind. Bai Li Changqing quickly made up for it, but let's be honest, his mentality is understandable. In the end times, it is also difficult to find a few people with a firm belief. After listening to this, Zhu Jing did indeed feel much less about Zhang Yi's thoughts. An unstable other, even if he is quite strong, he doesn't want to use him. In Zhu Zheng's eyes, Zhang Yi was just an ordinary Delta-class alien. Although there were not many headquarters of this level in the Jiangnan region, there were not very few. However, if he knew that Zhang Yi had devoured the incomplete essence of an Epsilon-class alien, then the situation would be difficult to say.